the Uffington White Horse mystery. If you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing and liking the video. It truly helps the channel grow and continue to create contents like this. There's something deeply unsettling about seeing a shape that shouldn't exist, stretched across a hillside, visible for miles, and yet stubbornly refusing to explain itself. The Uffington White Horse isn't a statue, and it isn't a drawing in the casual sense. It's a scar carved into the land itself, a figure cut down to the chalk bedrock of southern England, glowing white against green grass. And the longer you stare at it, the more it stops feeling like art and starts feeling like a message. At first glance, it looks simple. A horse, stylized, abstract, almost modern. But that simplicity is deceptive. This thing is ancient, shockingly ancient. We're talking about a time before Roman Britain, before Saxons, before recorded English history as we understand it. And yet the white horse feels intentional in a way that crosses millennia. Someone wanted it to be seen, not up close, not intimately, but from a distance, from the valley, from the sky. What's wild is that if you stand directly on the horse, you can't see it. The shape disappears. It only resolves when you step back. That alone feels symbolic, meaning that only emerges with distance, perspective as part of the design. That's not accidental. Whoever made this understood how humans perceive patterns across space, and they used the landscape as their canvas. And the landscape matters. The horse isn't carved just anywhere. It's cut into White Horse Hill, a high ridge with sweeping views of the surrounding countryside. This is a place that already feels charged, even before you know the history. Wind moves differently up there. Sound carries. The horizon feels closer somehow. If you wanted to place a symbol meant to dominate attention, to watch over territory, this would be the spot. The prevailing theory is that the Uffington White Horse dates back to the late Bronze Age or early Iron Age. That alone raises questions. Why a horse? Horses were valuable, powerful, symbols of speed, status, and warfare. But this isn't a realistic horse. It's not muscular or detailed. It's fluid, almost calligraphic, more like a symbol than an animal, which suggests it wasn't meant to depict a horse you'd see in a field. It was meant to represent something else. Some think it was a tribal emblem, a marker of territory, a declaration. This land belongs to us. Others think it was religious, a sun horse maybe, tied to solar worship. The curve of the body, the elongated lines, they echo motifs found on ancient coins and artifacts. That's interesting, because coins circulate, symbols spread. If the horse appears both on the hill and in people's pockets, it suggests a shared identity, something deeply embedded in culture. But here's the part that really gets me. The white horse doesn't maintain itself. Chalk weathers, grass grows back. Without constant upkeep, the figure would vanish within decades, which means that for thousands of years, generation after generation, people return to this hill to recut the lines, to scrape away grass, to renew the image. That's not passive tradition. That's commitment. That's ritual maintenance. Imagine being part of that, being a child and being brought up the hill to help clean the horse, not necessarily knowing why, only that this is what your people do. The shape existed before you, and it would exist after you, as long as you did your part. That creates continuity, identity, a living connection to ancestors you never met. And yet, despite that continuity, the meaning may have shifted over time. What began as a religious symbol might have become a local legend, a protective emblem, a story parents told their children. The horse may have meant different things in different eras, but the act of maintaining it kept it alive. The symbol outlasted its original explanation. There's also something strange about how modern the horse looks. If you showed it to someone without context, they might guess it was designed in the 20th century. Minimalist, abstract, almost logo-like. That messes with our assumptions about ancient art. We expect realism to come first, abstraction later. But the white horse flips that. It suggests ancient people were perfectly comfortable with symbolic representation. They didn't need to copy nature exactly to convey meaning. And then there's the question of why there's only one like it from that period. England has other chalk figures, but most are much later. Medieval, post-medieval. The Uffington horse stands apart, singular, which suggests it wasn't part of a widespread practice. It was something special, something unique to a particular group at a particular moment in time. The isolation of the figure adds to the mystery. If this was such an important symbol, why didn't others replicate it elsewhere? Or maybe they did, and those figures simply weren't maintained, fading back into the hills long ago. That's a haunting thought. How many symbols have been erased not by destruction, but by neglect? Standing near the horse, you also notice how unnatural it feels compared to its surroundings. The lines are too clean, too deliberate. Nature rarely produces something this precise. That tension between natural hill and artificial form creates a kind of visual vibration. Your eye keeps returning to it. It's almost impossible to ignore, which again feels intentional. Some legends claim the horse was cut by gods or giants. Others tie it to ancient battles, saying the horse commemorates a victory, perhaps even the slaying of a dragon. Those stories are obviously much later, but they reveal something important. When people no longer understood the original meaning, they didn't discard the symbol. They wrapped it in myth. They filled the gap with narrative. That's a pattern we see again and again. Mystery doesn't repel people. It attracts them. The less certain we are, the more stories we tell. The white horse became a canvas, not just for chalk, but for imagination. What I find most compelling is the idea that this wasn't meant to be decoded the way we try to decode it now. It wasn't a puzzle with a single correct answer. It was a marker, a presence, something that anchored people to place. In a world without maps, without satellites, without written borders, a giant symbol carved into a hill could say more than words ever could. And maybe the real mystery isn't what the white horse meant to the people who made it, but why it still affects us. Why a simple outline on a hillside can stop us in our tracks. Why it feels important, even when we can't explain why. That reaction says something about us as much as it says something about them. The Uffington White Horse isn't loud. It doesn't overwhelm you with detail or grandeur. It just sits there, quietly asserting its existence, daring you to look away. And once you've seen it, it's hard to forget. It lingers in your mind like a half-remembered dream, familiar but elusive, ancient but strangely current. There's a humility that comes with standing in front of something that has outlasted entire civilizations. The people who carved the horse are gone. Their language is gone. Their names are gone. But the horse remains. That alone challenges the way we think about legacy. It suggests that meaning doesn't always survive through explanation. Sometimes it survives through form. As the light changes across the hillside, the horse seems to shift. Shadows sharpen the lines or soften them. In bright sun it blazes. At dusk it fades. It's never static, which again feels fitting. A symbol that changes with time, yet endures through it. And the more you think about it, the more the white horse feels less like an artifact and more like a conversation across thousands of years. A message sent without words, without instructions, without context. Just a shape left behind, asking nothing, explaining nothing, but somehow still speaking. That's what pulls people back to it. That's why it refuses to settle into a neat category. It's art, but it's also land. It's history, but it's also living tradition. It's a horse, but it's also something else entirely. And that unresolved tension might be exactly the point. Because once you accept that not everything ancient is meant to be fully understood, you can start to appreciate the white horse for what it is, not what you want it to be. A reminder that humans have always marked their world, not just to be remembered, but to feel connected to something larger than themselves, something that stretches beyond a single lifetime. And standing there, with wind rushing over the hill and the chalk bright beneath your feet, it's hard not to feel that connection yourself. Hard not to feel like you're standing in the presence of a question that has never needed an answer to remain powerful. That feeling of standing inside a question never really goes away once you've encountered the white horse. It follows you, quietly, because it taps into something fundamental about how humans interact with landscape. We don't just live on land. We talk to it. We mark it. We try to anchor meaning in it, hoping that the ground itself will remember us when nothing else does. One of the strangest aspects of the Uffington White Horse is how little it dominates its surroundings physically, yet how completely it dominates them symbolically. It doesn't rise above the hill. It doesn't block the horizon. It's cut into the slope, almost submissive in form, and yet the entire hill feels defined by it. Remove the horse, and the place loses its identity. That's an incredible amount of power for something so understated. The maintenance of the horse tells another story. Over centuries, people organized gatherings known as scouring festivals, where communities came together to clean and restore the chalk lines. These weren't casual events. They were social, celebratory, almost ceremonial. Games, feasts, shared labor. That suggests the horse wasn't just a relic, it was an active participant in community life. What's fascinating is how the act of maintenance may have become more important than the original meaning. Even if people no longer knew why the horse existed, they knew it had to be cared for. Tradition outlived explanation. That's a powerful insight into how cultures endure. You don't always need understanding. Sometimes continuity is enough. There's also the idea that the horse functioned as a kind of guardian. From the valley below, it watches. It overlooks ancient pathways and routes of travel. Whether intentional or not, its position gives it authority. A silent witness to movement, to trade, to conflict, to change. It's easy to imagine people feeling watched by it, comforted or warned, depending on their relationship to the land. The abstraction of the horse continues to bother modern viewers in an interesting way. We're trained to associate ancient art with crudeness or lack of skill, but abstraction requires confidence. It requires knowing which details to omit. The Uffington horse isn't unfinished. It's distilled, reduced to its essence: motion, energy, direction. It's almost more about speed than form. That leads to another interpretation. Some have suggested the horse represents not an animal, but a concept: movement, power. The sun crossing the sky, a tribe in motion, identity as momentum rather than territory. That would make sense in a world where survival depended on adaptability and awareness rather than static borders. And then there's the sky. From above, the horse makes perfect sense, which raises the question of audience. Was this meant for people alone, or for gods, or for something imagined to exist above the world? Ancient cultures often thought in vertical terms. The sky mattered. Celestial cycles mattered. A symbol visible from afar, possibly even imagined as visible from the heavens, fits neatly into that worldview. Of course, there's no evidence anyone ever saw it from the air in a literal sense. But belief doesn't require literal access. It requires imagination. And imagination was something ancient people had in abundance. They didn't need drones to picture how their world looked from above. They built myths to fill that space. What complicates everything is how modern we've become in our thinking. We want function. We want purpose. We want a clean answer. But the white horse resists that. It refuses to tell us exactly what it's for. And maybe that's because it was never meant to serve a single function. It was layered, symbolic, social, spiritual, territorial, all at once. The landscape around it reinforces that sense of layering. Nearby burial mounds, ancient paths, and earthworks suggest this hill was part of a much larger sacred geography. The horse wasn't isolated in meaning, even if it appears isolated in form. It existed within a network of places that mattered, places where people gathered, remembered, and performed rituals that tied them to land and lineage. It's also worth considering that the white horse survived not because it was indestructible, but because people cared. Neglect would have erased it. That makes its survival a human choice repeated across generations. At any point, people could have stopped maintaining it. They didn't. Even when its meaning faded, its presence remained important. That tells us something uncomfortable about the present. What symbols are we maintaining today without fully understanding why? What traditions will outlive their explanations, and which ones will vanish because no one takes responsibility for them anymore? The white horse also highlights how different ancient relationships to land were. Today, land is property, resource, commodity. Back then, it was story, identity, memory. Cutting a symbol into a hill wasn't vandalism. It was communication, a way of inscribing meaning directly into the world. Standing at a distance, watching the horse emerge as a single coherent form, you realize how intentional that relationship was. The hill and the horse are inseparable. Neither works without the other. That's a level of integration we rarely aim for now. We build on land, not with it. And yet, despite everything we don't know, the white horse doesn't feel alien. It feels familiar in a strange way. Maybe because it speaks in a visual language we still understand. Shape, contrast, placement. These things bypass culture and hit something more basic in the human brain. The mystery, then, isn't just historical, it's psychological. Why does this resonate? Why does it still matter? Why do people travel from all over the world to stand on a windy hill and look at a chalk outline of a horse? Maybe it's because the white horse reminds us that humans have always tried to leave marks that transcend individual lives. Not monuments with names carved into them, but symbols that belong to everyone and no one. Symbols that invite interpretation rather than dictate it. In a way, the white horse is the opposite of a message with instructions. It doesn't tell you what to think. It simply presents itself and waits. That patience might be its greatest strength. It has all the time in the world. As long as someone is willing to climb the hill, scrape away the grass, and renew the lines, the horse will remain. And as long as it remains, it will continue to ask the same quiet question it's been asking for thousands of years. What do you see when you look at me? And what does that say about you? That question doesn't demand an answer. It doesn't need one. It's enough that it's asked. Enough that it lingers. Enough that it connects people across time through a shared moment of attention. The Uffington White Horse isn't a relic frozen in the past. It's a living symbol sustained by human choice. And in that sense, it's not just about ancient Britain. It's about the enduring human urge to belong, to remember, and to mark the world in a way that outlasts us. Long after the conversations about it fade, long after theories change, the horse will still be there, etched into chalk, glowing softly against the hill. Quiet, patient, waiting for the next set of eyes to step back far enough to see it whole.